My name is Flora, and I am 54 years old. For 8 years, I have been a widow, raising my only daughter alone, while building a small bakery from nothing. I saved $150,000 to help her buy a house before her 30th birthday. I thought I knew what love meant. I thought sacrifice would be rewarded with gratitude. 1 week before her birthday, I heard words that stopped my heart completely. Let me know where you are watching from today. If you have ever given everything to someone who wanted you gone, hit that like button and subscribe. What would you do if your own child wished you dead? The day Henry died changed everything I understood about life and survival. It was a Tuesday morning in early spring 8 years ago. He left for the construction site the same way he always did, kissing my forehead and promising to bring home Chinese food for dinner. Audrey was 21, then fresh out of college with her whole life ahead of her. I was 46, happy in my small world of family dinners and weekend gardening. The phone call came at 2:17 in the afternoon. I remember the exact time because I was looking at the clock when I answered. A foreman whose voice I did not recognize told me there had been an accident. A beam had fallen. Henry was gone before the ambulance arrived. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles from neighbors. Audrey cried in my arms for 3 days straight. She kept saying the same thing over and over. "We only have each other now, Mum. We only have each other." Henry left behind a life insurance policy worth $300,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. Some women might have used it to take a long vacation or buy a new car, or simply sit in grief for a year. But I had Audrey to think about. I had our future to consider. I used $100,000 to open a small bakery in our coastal Maine town. It was a risk that terrified me. I had always baked as a hobby, making pies for church fundraisers and cookies for school events. Turning that into a business felt like jumping off a cliff and hoping I could fly. But I needed something to wake up for. I needed a reason to get out of bed when the emptiness of the house threatened to swallow me whole. The first 2 years were brutal. I woke at 4 in the morning to start the ovens. I mixed dough until my shoulders ached and my hands cramped. I smiled at customers when all I wanted to do was crawl under the covers and cry for my husband. I came home at 8 or 9 at night, too tired to eat, only to do it all again the next day. Audrey watched me struggle. She was finding her own way, then working entry-level jobs, while figuring out what she wanted to do with her marketing degree. We leaned on each other in those early years. Sunday dinners became sacred. She would come over, and we would cook together, the way we had when she was a little girl, learning to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl. She used to tell me I was the strongest woman she knew. She used to say she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. I held on to those words during the hard times. When a batch of bread failed, when a customer complained, when I lay alone in our bed, reaching for a husband who was no longer there. I told myself that everything I was doing was for Audrey, that all my sacrifices would mean something someday. The bakery slowly found its footing. By the 4th year, we had regular customers who came every morning for coffee and pastries. By the 6th year, I had hired 2 part-time employees. By now, the business was stable enough that I could take an occasional day off without everything falling apart. I set aside the remaining $200,000 from Henry's insurance, plus everything I could save from the bakery profits. That money was for Audrey, for her wedding someday, for a down payment on a house, for whatever she needed to build the life she deserved. I never told her the exact amount. I just let her know that I was saving for her future, that when the time came, I would be there to help. She met Derek at a real estate conference 3 years ago. He was a top-performing broker at a prestigious firm, handsome in that polished way that comes from expensive haircuts and tailored suits. Audrey called me the night they met, her voice breathless with excitement. "Mum," she said, "I think I found someone special." I wanted to be happy for her. I truly did. But something about the way she described him made me uneasy. She talked more about his car and his apartment and his client list than about his kindness or his humor or the way he made her feel. When I finally met Derek, my unease did not disappear. He shook my hand with a grip that was firm but brief, his eyes already scanning the room for something more interesting. He made polite conversation, but never asked me anything about myself. Not about the bakery, not about Henry, not about who I was beyond being Audrey's mother. His mother, Pamela, was worse. She arrived at our first family dinner wearing pearls and a smile that never reached her eyes. She complimented my home in a way that somehow made it sound shabby. She asked about my bakery in a tone that suggested she found it quaint, like a child's lemonade stand. The wedding was 2 years ago, held at Pamela's waterfront estate. I offered to contribute, but was told that was not necessary, that everything was already handled. I sat in the second row and watched my daughter marry a man I barely knew in a ceremony that felt more like a business merger than a celebration of love. After the wedding, things began to change. Audrey called less often. When she did call, our conversations were shorter, interrupted by Derek's voice in the background or the buzz of her busy schedule. Sunday dinners became monthly, then occasional, then rare. I told myself it was normal. Newlyweds needed time to build their own life. Audrey was just adjusting to marriage, to her demanding job, to the social obligations that came with being part of Derek's world. But I noticed other things too. The way she started commenting on my clothes, suggesting I might want to update my wardrobe. The way she mentioned that Derek found my town a bit boring, that they preferred to spend weekends in the city. The way she stopped asking for my recipes, saying that Pamela had introduced her to a wonderful caterer. Still, I kept saving. The account grew to $150,000. I decided to give it to Audrey as a 30th birthday present, enough for a substantial down payment on a house. I imagined her face when I told her. I imagined her throwing her arms around me the way she used to, back when I was still her hero. I had no idea that my generosity was exactly what they had been counting on all along. The first crack appeared at Pamela's dinner party 1 month before Audrey's birthday. I received the invitation by mail, a thick cream-coloured card with embossed lettering. The formality of it struck me as odd. We were family now, were we not? A phone call would have sufficed. I drove 2 hours to reach Pamela's estate, my old sedan looking distinctly out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs in the circular driveway. A uniformed staff member took my coat at the door, looking at my department store dress with barely concealed judgment. The house was enormous, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers and artwork that probably cost more than my bakery earned in a year. Pamela greeted me with air kisses that landed nowhere near my cheeks. "Flora," she said, "still driving that little car? You really should let Derek find you something more reliable." I smiled and said nothing. I had learned that responding to Pamela's comments only encouraged more of them. The dinner conversation revolved around topics I knew nothing about. Summer homes in the Hamptons, yacht club memberships, the difficulty of finding good help these days. I ate my filet mignon and wondered when I had become invisible. Then Derek mentioned the house. We found the perfect property, he announced, his eyes bright with excitement. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, walking distance to the best schools. The asking price is $1.2 million, but I think we can get them down to 1.1. I nearly choked on my wine. $1.1 million for a house. Audrey caught my expression. "Mum," she said quickly, "it is an investment. Property values in that area have increased 15% annually. We would be foolish not to buy." I nodded, trying to process the numbers. Even with my $150,000, they would still need a mortgage of nearly $1 million. Could they afford that? I did not know what Derek earned, but Audrey's salary at the marketing firm was respectable but not extravagant. That is when I made my mistake. I mentioned the gift I was planning. I have been saving, I said. I was going to surprise you for your birthday, but since we are discussing houses, I want you to know that I have $150,000 set aside for your down payment. The table went silent. Derek and Pamela exchanged a glance that I could not read. Audrey stared at her plate. Then Derek laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. 150,000, he said. That is sweet, Flora, really. But for a house in this price range, we would need at least 200,000 down, preferably 250. Any less, and the monthly payments would be crushing. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Sweet. He had called my life savings sweet, like a child offering a handful of dandelions. Perhaps your mother could contribute more. Pamela suggested, her voice silky with implication. After all, she does have that little shop. And the house Henry left. Property values in Maine have increased quite a bit. Have they not? I looked at Audrey, waiting for her to defend me. Waiting for her to tell them that I had already given so much, that I had sacrificed years of my life to save this money. She said nothing. She just stared at her plate, pushing asparagus around with her fork. I drove home that night feeling smaller than I had in years. 2 weeks later, Audrey called about the money. Her voice was different than I remembered. Harder, more demanding. Mum, she said without preamble, Derek and I need to talk about your gift. I thought we discussed it at dinner, I said carefully. We did. But Derek ran the numbers, and the thing is, 150 is not really going to work. We were hoping you might be able to do more. More, Audrey, that is almost everything I have saved. What more could I possibly do? There was a pause. Then her voice came back, clipped and impatient. Well, you have the house and the bakery. If you sold them both, you could probably get, 500,000 or 600,000. You could move into a small apartment. You do not need all that space by yourself anyway. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. She was asking me to sell my home, the home Henry and I had built together, the bakery that had saved my sanity after his death. Audrey, I said slowly, I am not selling my home or my business. The 150 is my gift to you. I am sorry if it is not enough for the house you want, but perhaps you should look at something more affordable. She made a sound of frustration. You just do not understand, Mum. This is our future we are talking about. Derek says that if we do not get into this neighborhood now, we will never be able to afford it later. Derek says. Everything was about what Derek said now. I am sorry, I repeated. My answer is no. She hung up without saying goodbye. I told Ruth about the conversation the next day at the bakery. Ruth had worked with me for 6 years, starting as a part-time helper and becoming something closer to a partner and friend. She was 10 years older than me, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her rolling pin and looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Flora, she said quietly, there is something you should know. My stomach tightened. What Audrey came by last week when you were at the bank. She was showing off the place to some woman, I think it was that Pamela. And I heard them talking. What did they say? Ruth hesitated. The woman Pamela. She said your bakery was not worth much. She said you were stubborn for holding on to it. And Audrey, she did not disagree. She just laughed and said you were set in your ways. I felt the words like a physical blow. My own daughter mocking me to her mother-in-law. Ruth, I said slowly. Are you sure I am sure? I am sorry, Flora. I did not want to tell you, but after what you just said about the phone call, I thought you should know. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation with Audrey over the past 3 years. The subtle criticisms, the disappointed sighs, the way she looked at my clothes, my car, my life as if everything about me was an embarrassment. I decided I needed to talk to her face to face, clear the air, understand where things had gone wrong between us. I decided to drive to her apartment and surprise her with a visit. It was 7 days before Audrey's 30th birthday when I made the drive to her apartment. I left at 6 in the morning, wanting to arrive early enough to catch her before she left for work. The sun was just coming up over the ocean as I pulled out of my driveway, painting the water in shades of pink and gold. I thought about what I would say, how I would tell her that the money was still hers, but that I was worried about us, about the distance growing between us. I arrived at her building around 8. It was a sleek high-rise in a neighborhood I barely recognized, all glass towers and coffee shops with names in foreign languages. I parked my car and took the elevator to the 12th floor. At her door, I raised my hand to knock, but stopped when I heard voices inside. Not just Audrey and Derek, a third voice I recognized. Pamela. The door was slightly ajar, not enough to see inside, but enough to hear clearly. I should have knocked. I should have announced myself. But something made me pause. Something in the tone of the conversation. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Pamela was speaking. Her voice was clear and confident. What exactly is the plan with her money? Has she agreed to sell? Derek answered. No, she's being difficult about it. Says the 150 is all she can do. But I have been looking into it. The house is worth about 400,000 in this market. The bakery, if she sold the business, and the property, maybe another 200. Total assets of around 750 or 800,000. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they might hear it through the wall. They were discussing my assets, calculating my worth. Then Pamela again. And she has no other heirs. No siblings. No one else who might contest. Derek laughed. Just Audrey. Everything goes to her when the old lady kicks it. I pressed my hand against my chest, willing myself to keep breathing. Then Audrey spoke. My daughter. The baby I had held in my arms. The child I had nursed through fevers and nightmares. The young woman I had sacrificed everything for. The best gift would be if she just died. At least then I would inherit everything, and we would not have to listen to her talk about her sacrifices all the time. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered, my shoulder hitting the wall. For a moment I thought I might be sick right there in the hallway. Derek laughed again. Well, she is 54. Should not be too long now, right? Pamela chuckled. If we are lucky. In the meantime, we need to pressure her more. Maybe if you cry a little, Audrey, guilt her into selling, tell her this is your dream home and she is ruining your life by being selfish. I heard Audrey make a sound of agreement. I will try. But honestly, sometimes I think it would be easier if she just was not here at all. I do not remember leaving the building. I do not remember the elevator or the lobby or the walk to my car. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in the driver's seat with the engine off, staring at nothing. My daughter wanted me dead. Not in a moment of anger, not in a heated argument where words fly without thought. She had said it calmly, rationally, as part of a calculated discussion about how to get my money. I sat in that parking lot for an hour, maybe 2. The sun moved across the sky. People walked past my car without glancing in. The world continued, as if nothing had happened, as if everything I knew had not just crumbled to dust. Images flooded my mind. Audrey as a newborn, tiny and wrinkled and perfect. Her first steps across the living room floor, arms stretched toward me. Her face at 5 years old, covered in flour as we baked Christmas cookies together. her voice at 21, sobbing at her father's funeral. "We only have each other now, Mum." When had that girl become this stranger who calculated my death like an investment opportunity? I drove home in a daze. I do not remember the route. I must have taken the highway, but I could not say for certain. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was setting. I had been gone for nearly 12 hours. Inside the house, I sat in the darkness. I did not turn on any lights. I did not eat. I did not cry. I simply sat, feeling the weight of those words, pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. The best gift would be if she just died. She wanted me gone, my own flesh and blood, the child I would have walked through fire for. She looked at me and saw only an obstacle to her inheritance. For 3 days, I did not leave the house. Ruth called worried when I did not come to the bakery. I told her I had a flu. I did not have the strength to explain what had really happened. On the third night, something shifted inside me. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling the way I had done every night since Henry died. But this time, instead of emptiness, I felt something else rising up. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. Something colder, more deliberate. My daughter wanted me dead, so she could have my money. Fine. Then she would get exactly what she asked for. I would disappear from her life as completely as if I had died. And she would get nothing. The next morning I woke before dawn, with a clarity I had not felt in years. I called Ruth first, catching her before she left for the bakery. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need your help." I told her everything. The conversation I had overheard. The words that still echoed in my head every time I closed my eyes. The decision I had made in the dark hours of the night. Ruth was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you need me to do?" I spent the next 3 days putting my plan into action. First, I called Thomas, the attorney who had handled Henry's estate. He was an older man near retirement, with a reputation for discretion. "I need to make some changes," I told him. "To my will, to my accounts, to everything." I sat in his office for 2 hours signing documents. The will was rewritten. Audrey was removed as beneficiary. In her place, I listed a scholarship fund for culinary students, the local animal shelter, and Ruth. Thomas did not ask many questions. He was a professional accustomed to family disputes and changed minds. But when I finished signing, he looked at me over his reading glasses. "Flora," he said gently, "are you certain about this? These are significant changes." "I am certain," I said. "My daughter told me the best birthday gift would be if I died. I am simply giving her what she asked for." He nodded slowly. "I understand. Everything will be processed within the week." Next, I called my sister Margaret. We had not been close in recent years, caught up in our own lives and the distance between Maine and Vermont. But when I told her what had happened, her response was immediate. "Come stay with me," she said. "I have a spare room. Stay as long as you need." I could hear the anger in her voice, the protectiveness of an older sister. It made me feel less alone. Then I began the process of unwinding my financial ties to Audrey. The $150,000 that had been earmarked for her house was transferred to a new account in my name only. I closed the joint emergency account we had opened years ago, the one she could access if anything happened to me. I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance from Audrey to a charitable trust. Finally, I made arrangements for the bakery. I could not sell it, not without breaking my own heart. But I could put it in Ruth's hands. "I am making you a partner," I told her. 50-50 ownership. You will run things while I am gone. If I decide not to come back, we can discuss a full transfer then." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. Flora, you built this place. I cannot take it from you. You are not taking anything. You are protecting it for me. And you are the only person I trust to do that. The house I would keep. But I would close it up, leave it empty. Let Audrey wonder what had happened to her inheritance while she waited for news of my death that would never come in the way she expected. The last piece was the letter. I spent an entire evening writing it, crossing out words and starting over until my wastebasket overflowed with crumpled paper. I needed to say exactly the right things. Not too angry, not too sad. Just the truth, plain and simple. When I finished, I read it one last time. Audrey, I heard what you said. Every word. The best gift would be if I just died. So I am giving you that gift. From this moment on, I am dead to you. You will not receive my money. You will not inherit my house or my bakery. You will not hear from me unless you find a way to become the daughter I thought I raised. I am not punishing you. I am protecting myself. Loving you does not mean letting you destroy me. When you remember who I really am, not a source of money, but your mother, I will be here. But I will not wait, and I will not hope. I placed the letter in an envelope along with a photograph. It was a picture of Audrey at 5 years old, sitting on my lap. Both of us laughing at something Henry had said from behind the camera. I had carried that photo in my wallet for 25 years. Now it would be my goodbye. On the day before Audrey's 30th birthday, I drove to her apartment one last time. The building security knew me. They let me up without question. I used the spare key Audrey had given me years ago, back when she still wanted me to have access to her life. The apartment was empty. She and Derek were at work, probably planning how to pressure me into selling my assets. I walked through the rooms slowly. The expensive furniture, the artwork on the walls, the kitchen with its granite counters and stainless steel appliances. Nothing in this place felt like my daughter. It was all Derek, all Pamela, all the life they had convinced her she deserved. I placed the envelope on the dining table, propping it against a vase of fresh flowers. Then I took one last look around. Goodbye, I whispered. To the apartment. To the daughter I thought I knew. To the life I was leaving behind. Then I walked out and did not look back. I drove north that afternoon. 5 hours of highway watching Maine fade into New Hampshire, and then Vermont. The leaves were starting to turn splashes of red and gold against the evergreen. I pulled over twice just to breathe the clean mountain air and remind myself that I was still alive. Margaret was waiting on her porch when I arrived. Her house was small, a cottage really nestled in a valley surrounded by forest. She wrapped me in a hug that lasted a full minute. "You are safe now," she said. "Whatever happens next, you are safe." That night, lying in her guest room, I stared at the unfamiliar ceiling and waited for regret to come. It never did. All I felt was an overwhelming sense of relief, like I had been carrying a boulder on my back for years without realizing it, and now someone had finally lifted it away. I did not know what the future held. I did not know if Audrey would ever understand what she had done, or if our relationship could ever be repaired. But I knew one thing for certain. I was done, living for someone who wished I was dead. Audrey found the envelope on her 30th birthday. I learned the details later, pieced together from what Ruth told me, and what I could imagine based on knowing my daughter for 3 decades. She came home from work, expecting to find cards and gifts, perhaps an early celebration planned by Derek. Instead, she found the cream-colored envelope propped against the flowers, her mother's handwriting on the front. According to Ruth, who heard the story from a mutual friend, Audrey opened it carelessly at first. She probably expected a check, a birthday card with a sentimental message. Instead, she read my words, every single one. Derek was there when she finished. Pamela had come over for the occasion, probably expecting to hear good news about the money. Instead, they watched Audrey's face go white. "What does it say?" Derek demanded. "She knows," Audrey whispered. "She heard everything. She is gone." The fallout was immediate. Derek grabbed the letter and read it himself. His reaction, from what I understand, was rage rather than guilt. He called me selfish, crazy, a spiteful old woman who was ruining their plans out of pettiness. Pamela was more practical. She immediately began calculating what this meant for their finances. Without my contribution, the dream house was out of reach. Without the promise of future inheritance, their entire strategy had crumbled. Audrey tried to call me 17 times that first day, according to my phone records. I had cancelled my old number and gotten a new one. Only Ruth and Margaret knew how to reach me. She drove to my house and found it dark and empty. The neighbors said I had left several days ago, destination unknown. She went to the bakery and confronted Ruth, demanding to know where I was. Ruth, bless her, did not flinch. "Your mother does not want to be found," she said. "And after what you did, I do not blame her." "What I did?" Audrey's voice rose. "I did not do anything." Ruth looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "You wished her dead, Audrey. She heard you say it. She heard all three of you talking about her like she was an obstacle to be removed." Audrey had no response to that. Over the following weeks, the consequences of my disappearance rippled through their lives. Without the down payment, I had promised Derek and Audrey could not afford the house they wanted. They had to settle for a modest condo in a less prestigious neighborhood. Derek blamed Audrey. Audrey blamed me. The cracks in their marriage began to show. Pamela, it turned out, was not as wealthy as she pretended. Her estate was mortgaged to the hilt. The lifestyle she projected was built on credit and the expectation that Derek would marry well. A wife whose mother had disowned her was not what she had planned for. The truth about Derek emerged slowly. Late nights that were not about work. Unexplained withdrawals from their joint account. A gambling problem he had hidden behind his polished exterior. Audrey discovered it 3 months after my disappearance, when a collections agency called about debts she did not know existed. Derek had been betting on sports, convinced that one big win would solve all their problems. Instead, he had dug them into a hole of nearly $50,000. The arguments became constant. Derek blamed Audrey for losing access to my money. Pamela blamed both of them for mishandling the situation. Audrey, alone in the middle, began to see her life for what it really was. She had traded her family for a fantasy. She had traded her mother for a husband who saw her as a financial strategy. She had traded everything that mattered for a dream house she would never own. 6 months after my birthday letter, Audrey filed for divorce. Ruth kept me informed through occasional phone calls. I listened without comment, feeling something I did not expect. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a deep, weary sadness. This was not the revenge I wanted. I had not wanted Audrey to suffer. I had only wanted her to see what she had become. 1 month after the divorce was finalized, Ruth forwarded me a letter. It had arrived at the bakery, addressed to me in Audrey's handwriting. The envelope was thin. I held it for a long time before opening it, sitting on Margaret's porch with a cup of tea growing cold beside me. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in writing. No pretense, no excuses. Just words. Mum, I do not know if you will ever read this. I do not know if you can ever forgive me. But I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I said. I understand what I became. I understand what I lost. Derek is gone. Pamela has cut me off completely. I am living in a small apartment working to pay off debts I did not know existed. And every day I wake up and think about you. Not your money, not the house, not what I thought I wanted. Just you. I think about Sunday dinners when I was a little girl. I think about learning to make pie crust with your hands guiding mine. I think about the way you held me when Dad died, even though you were breaking too. I think about all the years you sacrificed so I could have a good life. And I think about how I threw it all away for people who never cared about me at all. I am not asking for money. I am not asking for anything except one chance to tell you in person how sorry I am. If you never want to see me again, I will understand. But I needed you to know that the daughter you loved is still in here somewhere, and she misses her mother more than words can say. I read the letter 3 times. Then I set it down and cried for the first time since leaving Maine. I did not respond to Audrey's letter immediately. I needed time. Time to think. Time to feel. Time to figure out what I actually wanted. Margaret understood. She did not push me to reconcile or to stay away. She just made sure I had hot meals and good company while I processed everything. In Vermont, I slowly built a new life. I started small baking for Margaret's book club, then for the local coffee shop. Word spread about the woman from Maine who made apple pies that tasted like home. Within a few months, I had steady orders and a growing reputation. Nora lived next door to Margaret. She was 62, widowed like me, with a laugh that could fill a room. We became friends over morning walks and evening tea. She listened to my story without judgment and shared her own tales of family disappointment and eventual healing. "You do not have to forgive her," Nora said one evening. "But holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." "I know," I said. "I just do not know how to let it go." "You start by living well," she replied. "The rest follows." So I lived. I joined a hiking group and discovered muscles I did not know I had. I took an art class and produced watercolors that were terrible but satisfying. I read books I had been meaning to read for 20 years. I slept late on Sundays without guilt. For the first time since Henry died, I was not just surviving. I was actually living. Ruth visited once, making the long drive to see me and report on the bakery. Business was good. The customers asked about me. She had hired a new assistant who was eager to learn. "They miss you," Ruth said. "I miss you." "I miss it too," I admitted. "But I needed this. I needed to figure out who I am when I am not just someone's mother or someone's wife or someone's boss. And who are you?" I smiled. I am still figuring that out. But I think I like her. The months passed. Fall turned to winter. Vermont buried itself in snow, and I learned to love the silence of a world wrapped in white. I started writing nothing serious, just memories and thoughts that I typed into an old laptop Margaret found in her closet. Then spring came, and with it a decision. I wrote back to Audrey. A short letter, not promising anything but leaving a door open. "I am willing to meet. Once. We will talk. I will listen to what you have to say. But I need you to understand that nothing will go back to the way it was. If we rebuild anything, it will be something new, and you will have to earn my trust through actions, not words." We met at a coffee shop in Boston, neutral territory for both of us. I arrived early and chose a table by the window. When Audrey walked in, I barely recognized her. She had lost weight. Her hair was shorter. But it was her eyes that struck me most. They looked older, tired, haunted. She sat down across from me without attempting a hug. "Smart." "Mum," she said, and her voice broke on the single syllable. I let her talk. For nearly an hour, I just listened. She told me about the divorce, about discovering Derek's debts, about Pamela's abandonment, when there was no more money to chase. She told me about the small apartment and the job she hated, and the long nights wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Then she told me about the moment she realized what she had lost. It was Christmas, she said. I was alone in my apartment with a frozen dinner and a plastic tree. And I kept thinking about the Christmas cookies we used to make together. The way you would let me lick the bowl, even though you were not supposed to. The way Dad would sneak pieces before they were cool enough to eat. Her eyes were wet. And I realized I had traded all of that for a man who never loved me, and a woman who saw me as a means to an end. I traded you, Mum, the only person who ever really loved me. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time we had touched in over a year. I loved you from the moment I knew you existed, I said. I loved you through every tantrum and every teenage door slam and every disappointing phone call. That love did not stop because you hurt me. But love is not enough if there is no respect, no trust, no basic human decency. I know, she whispered. I know. Then we will start there, I said. One conversation at a time. One action at a time. You do not get to rush this, Audrey. You do not get to apologize once and expect everything to be fine. If you want a relationship with me, you will build it brick by brick. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will, Mum. I promise. I did not tell her about the bakery. I did not tell her about Vermont or Margaret or Nora or my watercolor paintings. Those things were mine, earned in the fire of her rejection. She would learn about them slowly if she proved herself worthy. We said goodbye in the parking lot. She asked if she could hug me, and I let her briefly. Then I watched her drive away, and I felt something I had not expected. Not joy, not resolution, just a small, tentative flicker of hope. It has been 2 years since that first meeting in Boston. I am still living in Vermont, though I have my own place now, a small cottage not far from Margaret. The bakery in Maine is thriving under Ruth's management. We split the profits, which is more than fair for the work she puts in. I visit once a month to check in and bake with the new team. My life looks nothing like I imagined it would at this age. I thought I would be a grandmother by now, hosting Sunday dinners and spoiling little ones with cookies. Instead, I am a woman who hikes mountain trails and paints landscapes, and finally reads all the books on my nightstand. I do not regret any of it. Audrey and I have rebuilt something. Not what we had before. Something different. Something that required both of us to change. She calls every week now. Real conversations, not demands. She asks about my art, my friends, my health. She tells me about her new job, her therapy sessions, the boundaries she is learning to set. She has stopped looking for someone to save her and started saving herself. Last fall, she came to Vermont for a visit. We spent 3 days together. We cooked. We walked. We talked about Henry for the first time in years, sharing memories we had both been afraid to touch. On her last evening, we sat on my porch watching the sunset. Mum, she said, I want to learn how to make Grandma's apple pie, the one you used to make every Thanksgiving. I never paid attention when you tried to teach me, and now I realize I do not know how. I looked at her. This was not about the pie. We both knew that. I can teach you, I said, but this time you have to do the work yourself. I will guide you, but you have to roll the dough and slice the apples and feel it come together under your own hands. She smiled a real smile that I had not seen in years. I would like that. We made the pie the next morning. Her crust was uneven and her slices were crooked. But when it came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, she looked at it like she had created something miraculous. I did it, she said. I actually did it. You did, I agreed, and now you know you can. She hugged me. Then a real hug, the kind we used to share when she was small and I was her whole world. I hugged her back and felt something settle in my chest. Not the old love exactly. Something new, something that had survived the fire and come out stronger. I still have the photograph I left on her table that day. She brought it back to me, apologizing for the water stains from her tears. I keep it in my wallet again, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far we have come. My daughter once wished me dead. She said it calmly, calculating the value of my assets against the inconvenience of my existence. But I did not die. I chose to live. I chose to walk away from people who saw me as a burden and toward a life that honored my own worth. And in doing so, I gave both of us a chance to be reborn. If you are listening to this story and recognizing yourself in it, let me tell you what I learned. Love does not require you to accept cruelty. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappear from the life of someone who takes you for granted and reappear in your own story as the hero. You deserve to be loved by people who see your value, not your utility. You deserve relationships built on respect, not obligation. You deserve a life that brings you joy, not just one where you serve everyone else's dreams while your own gather dust. I found that life at 54. It is not too late for you to find yours. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who might be struggling with a difficult family situation. Sometimes knowing we are not alone is the first step toward healing. Thank you for spending this time with me. May you find the courage to choose yourself, and may that choice lead you to places more beautiful than you ever imagined. Until next time, take care of your heart. It is the only one you have.